All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with more MLE Draft Madness. We are coming at you with the Champion League Draft. My name is an odd fellow. Joining me for this one is Captain at Soka, one of my best friends in casting. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing just fantastic. I gotta say, I was watching y'all, going through the Academy League draft, and I gotta say, some really interesting choices I was seeing unfold. And I'm not gonna lie, it looked like a lot of fun watching y'all talk about all the new drafts and changes that have been coming up into the new league. And I gotta say, I'm excited to even just go even further now that we're pushing into the Champions League. So I'm already pretty hyped just from watching the Academy League.
Yeah, and the Blizzard are going to have the first pick of this draft, and this one's always the most exciting. Who's going to be the first one off the board. And as we wait for this one to be confirmed, this is such an exciting name for me.
Yeah, I even remember right before we were starting, it was like, I'm hoping John Mullenkamp gets drafted. And it's funny because that last name is actually somebody that I know in real life. Their last name is Mullenkamp. So it's actually really cool to see that person. But Mullenkamp, definitely a top pick for sure. I'm not surprised to see them going number one in the draft.
Yeah, now that we have the thumbs up and it is confirmed, we do have John Mellencamp. Congratulations, being the first one off the board. And this is such a solid player here, too. 64 games played with a 60% win percentage, sitting at that 14.5 salary. The Blizzard coming out swinging with a fantastic first-round pick.
Yeah, not only that, but the dude is taking some really impressive shots. Now, don't get me wrong, we're also looking saves to shots, but their shot to goal ratio is not that bad. I mean, it's pretty much average consistent, but it's that consistency you're looking for, and it's the all-around balance that we're getting from a player like John Mullenkamp, which is honestly hard to find a player that can kind of thrive in not just shots, but also goals, saves, and assists. So that well-balanced all-around player. Just not surprised to see them go so early.
Yeah, and when you're picking a 14.5 right off the bat, you have a little bit of risk of rank out there, but you want your first round pick to be impactful, and it definitely looks like that's what the Blizzard are going to do here, as we're just waiting for confirmation on the second Wizards pick. It's going to be interesting to see who they end up finalizing here. As the Wizards, one of the better organizations in MLE, in my opinion. They have a really good history of victories here. And we do have the thumbs up, and the Wizards are going to be taking Fitz with the second overall pick.
Now, you see, this is what I'm actually looking forward to see, because this is my type of player, honestly. I like the more defensive, concentrated players. Not saying that they're all defense, but their defensive statistics are impressive. Seeing that and just knowing that they're able to be capable within the net, and they have that, they have that specialty. It's my type of player, because I like having my defense turn to offense. So having somebody reliable in the net is definitely something I would look out for.
Yeah, and over 48 total games played, Fitz definitely has shown a lot of statistics here with his scrims, and I'm sure obviously showed plenty in tryouts, but we are going to go ahead and move right along to the fourth overall pick belonging to the Shadow, and Euronate is going to pick Jimmer with the fourth overall pick.
Yeah, very nice. Just going off the Shadow in general, I always like watching the Shadow because, for one, I'm a fan of the name. Also, Urinate just coming in clutch with that pick, coming for Jimmer. Now, I don't know too much about Jimmer, but I definitely have seen them play. Just watching them, kind of progress forward into this draft. I'm a little surprised to see them go this early, but at the same time, not. I just thought someone else would pick up Jimmer besides the Shadow.
Yeah, and I do apologize. I need to backtrack myself a little bit. The third pick was a retention pick by the Ducks, and they were retaining King Duff. So really solid retention there from them. But yeah, Jimmer, an extremely solid player here at a 14 salary. Third with assists at 1.25. So I think Euronate really hit a good one here. As we are moving on to the fifth overall pick by the Lightning, and they're going to be taking Waffle King off the board.
Waffle King. Now that's definitely going to be a name that I'm going to remember going forward. And going into the Champion League, that's just going to be so much fun to say over and over again. But let's look at this win percentage for Waffle King. 80% win percentage. Unbelievable stat-wise. And then not only that, but in the MVPR, definitely one of those highlight reel players that you love to see on the screen, and a really good pickup for the Lightning.
Yeah, and he only with about 21 games played in two, still maintaining that 80% win percentage is absolutely insane. So incredible pick here by the Lightning at number 5. And with that said, the sixth pick is going to be to the Spartans, and B++ is getting a good one here in Rhine.
Yeah, and then we know B++. I've seen them play over and over again, be it in MLE and everywhere else. So you know when you caught the eye of a player like B++, you know you have made like an amazing impression. So I'm going to be looking. I have really high expectations for Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, not the best stat line that we've ever seen, especially from a 14.5, but that win percentage says everything at 60% and 71st overall. So a very solid team player here. And we are going to have our 7th pick overall going to the Express, and Kofa is going to be taking Hayes here.
Okay, now I mean, as far as Hayes is concerned, like I don't really know too much about this player. But I will have to say, you know, their win percentage isn't that bad. You know, it wasn't as good as looking at, you know, so I mean, it's kind of hard to stack up when we just saw like an 80% win percentage, but 60% is still phenomenal. And they are a heavy shooter. I like those players that are not afraid to shoot the ball, and their shot percentage is pretty impressive, if I do say the least. If you can constantly hammer the ball onto the defense, eventually they will crack. And you need those high spitting shooters like Hayes.
Yeah, and with only 9 games played in scrims, you know, this player definitely showed a lot more in tryouts, I'm sure. So obviously probably really good at communication, rotations, and everything, you know, giving those intangibles. But we do have our confirmed 8th pick as well. And the Wizards are going to be picking again, and they're going to be taking Pugs, who we don't have a ton of stats on.
But you see, that's the best thing about not having someone with a ton of stats is that you don't know what they're capable of. Apparently, people over there by the Wizards definitely saw something in Pugs. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be bothering. So it's going to have me like really excited to see how Pugs does going forward, because they are literally a blank slate.
Yeah, and while we don't have a ton of exact stats, we do have the ranks here over on the free agent board. Pugs is going to be 7th overall with assists per game in doubles, 15th in MVPR and shots, 10th in shots and standard. So just all around across 2s and 3s, an extremely, excuse me, I was reading off some wrong stats there. But either way, an extremely solid player there by Pugs. But then our 9th pick is going to be going to the Spectre, and they're going to be taking Maximum Ernie.
You see, and I've always like loved watching the Spectre, because like just from the name is just being so ominous. So I can imagine them attracting some ominous players. And let's talk about Maximum Ernie right here. 66, again, a nice impressive win percentage. Anything above 50 is going to be decently nice. But then we're also looking at the MVPR rating. It's really, really good. I like seeing players that are able to, you know, every once in a while put the team on their back. And that's kind of the player you really want to have in your roster, especially getting them early in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving right along, we're going to get the 10th pick here from the Bears. And Zach is going to take Crow here, who's a 2s only player and a 13 salary as well. Really early for a 13 to go.
Now, you see, I could be mistaken, but Crow does seem a tidbit familiar. I could swear, like, I can't put my finger on it, but I know I've seen Crow before. And, you know, looking at them stat-wise, you know, they still have a lot of improvement to make. But I do have to say, again, anything above a 50% win percentage is still good. And that's one of the things that I love about Champion League, is that you get to see players grow from when they start to when they finish.
Yeah, and seeing a 13, like I said, going this early, this is definitely a good developmental pick and likely has a lot of intangibles for this team as well. But moving along, we are going to have the 11th pick from the Sharks, and they are going to be taking Storm here off the board.
Now, and again, we're looking at the win percentage, you know, just looking, you know, because that's what it comes down to the end of the day, who's winning games and who's losing the games. And this person right here, Storm, is winning games with 71% win percentage.
Yeah, and that's an insane win percentage, even with only 20 games played. So showing very well in the statistics, and then going to tryouts and showing all, you know, the intangibles that you need with communication and team player and all that goodness. But yeah, an extremely solid 14 here coming out from the Sharks. Definitely prefers playing 3s, but really good 2 stats as well. And with that, we're going to be moving along to the 12th pick from the Hurricanes, and they're going to be taking a player that I'm extremely familiar with. Very excited to see my boy Sci-Fry going off the board here.
Just off the bat, that's just a fun name to say. It's Sci-Fry. But being from New Orleans, I gotta say I'm pretty much affiliated with the Hurricanes. Personally, I'm a fan of that team. But let's take a look at them real quick. They're definitely more leaning of like a 2s variety. I mean, they prefer both the playlist, but I feel like they do a little bit better in 2s. So I'm gonna be looking out for them when it comes to the doubles league.
Yeah, and I've played with Sci-Fry outside of MLE before. An extremely solid player, great pick by them. But we are going to be moving along to the 13th pick, which belongs to the Eclipse, and C Squared is going to be taking Spartacus.
Spartacus. I am Spartacus, but not this Spartacus. This Spartacus right here is a PC player, so already, hail to the master race of the PC team. But we're also looking at, their win percentage. And again, we don't have too many stats on them. They've only had 20 games played, so there's room for potential for growth there.
Yeah, and I'm looking more at the saves there. 60th percentile in saves at 1.85, so extremely solid defensive player, great team player from them. And moving along to the 14th pick from the Outlaws, they're going to be taking Pav of 14.5 off the board.
Now, Pav, I got to say, I haven't seen much for Pav, but again, they are definitely impressive with their win percentage in duos. Now, because threes is going to be a new implemented thing coming in this season, it's going to be very fascinating to see how they adapt from being someone who is like Pav is more accustomed to the twos moving into the threes league. That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like he's doing pretty good in threes himself. 10th overall with shots in threes, 15th in twos, and then 7th in twos with assists. So just an insane all-around player here. Great pick from the Outlaws. Being a 14.5, I think Pav is going to be really good as a high-ranking, on-field leader type for the Outlaws this season. And I think he's definitely going to be looking someone to look for going forward as we're just kind of waiting on confirmation here for our 15th pick.
Yeah, and it looks like that we are going to have confirmation here. It's going to be You Were Cool being picked up there, and that is a very good pick because I'm looking at the, at the stat line here for this one, and this is actually pretty consistent for both twos and threes. Both of their stats for both of those game modes are pretty impressive. So that's going to be a double threat that you're going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And our 16th pick is going to be a retention here. So our next pick will be the 17th pick from the Hive, which is going to be Rebel coming off the board here early. Okay,
so Rebel coming out pretty strong out there in the get-go. With 24 games played, they have a 54 win percentage, and again, not bad whatsoever. But I would like to see a little bit more scoring come from them. But I mean, they have a decent shot percentage, but we just need to see that goals come up a little bit, and then you're going to have yourself an all-star player. And then once again, that 54% win percentage is nothing to wave a stick at.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our 18th pick is going to be another retention here. I apologize. I'm trying to get some stats, but it's just a little more difficult with the retentions. But, in Champ League especially, the retentions are so huge because you get that experience coming back from the previous season, which should hopefully help you out going forward. And then our 19th pick is in. Whoops, I clicked the wrong player there. That is going to be the Express picking Shaquille O'Neal, who's another player that we don't have a ton of stats on going forward here, but still looks like an extremely solid pick there by the Express.
Well, I mean, if you're named after one of the most monumental, iconic basketball players of all time, you got to be decent in almost any sport you try, and that's including esports. So Shaquille O'Neal, you literally have some big shoes to fill, my dude. I hope you are able to pull it out.
Yep, and then moving along to our next pick is going to be the 20th overall pick to the Blizzard, and they're going to take Mazul off the board. Very solid 14 salary.
There is no player, only Mazul. And let's take a look at what they're bringing to the table. With 70 games played, now that's more than what we've seen for most of the players so far, and still with 70 games played, holding down that 51% win percentage, not bad at all. And then over there on threes, they are the 37th placeholder for the shots on target. So again, we have one of those heavy focused shooters that we just love to see because it's that unrelenting offense that eventually will come in handy when it comes to, putting shots in the back of the net.
Yeah, and with the pick here with Mazul and the first overall pick in John Mellencamp, I think the Blizzard are showing that they are definitely going to be very offensive-minded coming into this one. And then after the Blizzard pick, the 21st and 22nd picks are going to be retentions again. You can see those on the screen for your draft board. So our next pick is going to be the 23rd to the Flames, and they're going to be taking Daywalker, another 13.
Yeah, and again, you got to be mindful of the salary here because it's finding that perfect balance. And when you're picking up a 13, I guess that will give you a little bit more to work with when you're working through overall salary. But I'm definitely having some high hopes for Daywalker because they only have 26 games under their belt. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they grow and mold with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our 24th pick is going to be another retention. You start seeing a lot more retentions up in the CL, especially in the first round, because you're looking more for the late round players to see who's kind of left, so you can really build a team around your existing team. And so I think with the Flames taking Daywalker at 23, I love seeing 13s going early because they're someone that you can build around. When you take a 13 this early in the draft, that shows that you have a lot of confidence in them to grow, and you're seeing the potential that they have to bring to your team. So I think really solid pick from them. And then we're just waiting on the 25th pick from the Outlaws to be confirmed. And it looks like they do have one tentatively. We're just waiting on some confirmation here from the Outlaws.
Yeah, let's see if they're going to take the same strategy and go for maybe like another 13 salary, because again, just being able to mold these players into someone amazing is what MLE is all about. Is taking players and then turning them into better versions of themselves. And we have confirmation. It's going to be the Outlaws taking Motions.
Yeah, and Motion's not going to be a 13, but will be a 14, so still some room to grow there. Not quite hitting that rank out ceiling yet. But, great stat line here for Motions. 52% win percentage in 2, 62% win percentage in 3s across roughly 40 games played in total. So just looking like a really solid overall player. Great pick there from the Outlaws.
Yep, and now moving on to the 26th pick in the MLE Season 12 draft, we have Sadami.
That name sounds like it could be very interesting if you say it incorrectly. But we see another 14 and a half coming off the board. So definitely these 14 and a halves being favored early on. You want to have that experience to help you get wins and get a championship right now. These are the teams that aren't really all that concerned about development. They just want to get wins right now. And this player is definitely capable of doing that. 55 games played in 3s and a 60% win percentage. Very solid pick here by the Demolition at the 25th pick. Now, 27, 28, and 29 are all going to be retentions yet again. So once again, we're seeing a lot of retentions coming out in the first round. That's usually what you see in these MLE drafts. So we are going to be moving right along to our 30th pick, which is going to be held by the Tyrants. And Taylor is going to be taking Alton here.
Now let's take a look at Alton right here. Now they don't really have much going on in 3s because already off the jump they prefer 2s, but MLE was founding on 2s, so there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And again, an impressive MVP R rating coming from Alton with a 6.05 MVP R rating and still maintaining that 50% win percentage. So they're definitely going to be a threat to see in 2s, and I'm looking forward to see what they can do in 3s.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see stats that are a little more barren like this one, that just shows, as we talked about in the AL draft, that these players went and got their eligibility done and then went and did tryouts. So this is definitely a player that obviously tried out quite a bit with the Tyrants, and they obviously liked the on-field communication and all the other intangibles that you can get. So with that, we are going to move right along to the 31st pick being held by the Hawks, and Stas is going to be taking Pyre Squared here.
All right, now Pyre Squared, and again, we're looking at, on the 2 side, and it's pretty barren, so they don't, again, it's just anything can happen. It's a blank slate. It's like literally a wild card, but we're watching them in 3s right now, and again, the 57% win percentage, pretty high in the upper 50s, so that's just telling me that this player knows how to rotate efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen Pyre Squared in other leagues outside of MLE. He is a very, very solid offensive player. Great offensive rotations from him. I think this is going to be a very solid in-game leader coming in at a 14.5 salary. Definitely is going to be someone who's going to try and carry this Hawks team as much as he can. So our 32nd pick is going to be in by the Elite, and that is going to be Cordial.
Yeah, Cordial, and I can definitely relate to Cordial right here because they prefer 3s. I also prefer 3s. It's my favorite game mode. To me, it's the most competitive, and they're holding a 50% win percentage on the stat line there. But I really want to look at how they do goals per game. And, they've only had 12 games played so far in 3s, but they managed to score at least one time every time that they have played in 3s. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that's the kind of consistency you want to see at this level. When you hit this Champ League level, you've been playing Rocket League for a while, so you want to see that kind of consistency. That's exactly what the Elite are going to be getting here. That is what the Elite are going to be getting here with this pick from Cordial.
Yep, absolutely. And then once again, just talking about like how they look overall, with Cordial, and again, just saying like they're not so much with the 2s, but again, it's just showing that they have room to grow and that they have the ability just by looking at their 3 statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is going to do it for our first round there. You're going to see the board going away here very quickly. And then it's going to be just me and Atsoka giving a little bit of a recap of the first round as we get ready for the second one. But I think that was a really solid overall first round from all teams involved there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting to see who is the first to go. And everybody, of course, wants to be the first one to go. They want to be at the top of the draft pick. But seeing all the potential that is being made by these first round picks, like, definitely has me excited to go forward into the Champion League, because a lot of these stats, and well, not a lot, but that we just had some that were kind of blank slates, which means there's just literally limitless potential there.
Yeah, and once again, congratulations to John Mellencamp for being the first player off the board there and being the first overall pick. I think the biggest thing for me in that first round was seeing 2 13 salaries going extremely early, not even 13 and a half, just straight up 13. And I think that shows that teams are really starting to appreciate some of this untapped potential that these players have, and wanting to grab players that can be successful for them for a long time coming.
Yeah, and that's really what MLE is about, like, underneath it all, underneath, like, the amazing production value that we have that I love to watch. It's really about taking players and then making them better and helping them grow in the esport that we all love, which is Rocket League.
Yep, and we are going to go ahead and get right along here with the second round. You should be seeing a clean slate here of our draft board. The Blizzard, once again, on top with the first pick of the round. Just waiting for confirmation here. There it's going to be, and the Blizzard are going to be taking Boostin'.
Yeah, Boostin', again, we're seeing that around like the 13 range. It's a 13.5 salary. So this is another 13 player to go early. And clearly, they definitely see something in this player that could be made like even better going on, because they prefer twos. Don't get me wrong, they prefer twos. But, being implemented in threes going on to this season, who knows what they could be capable of.
Yeah, and I think we see here with the shots on goal and MVPR and goal stats from Boostin' that they're going to be a very offensive player to pair with the support play in John Mellencamp and the other picks that Blizzard had in the first round. And moving along to the 34th overall pick is going to be the Express, taking Obfu, who looks like is going to be, who's going to be another 13 and a half going off the board.
Now, this is actually pretty impressive for a 13 and a half player. Like, not trying to make generalizations here, but 75% win percentage in threes on a 13.5. Normally, you'll see higher win percentages like that in a much higher salary range.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, a lot of times these players are promotions from other leagues, so their stats are definitely a lot better. But we're going to move ahead to the 35th pick from the Flames, and the Flames are going to be taking Flap, and we're seeing a lot of 13 and a halves coming off the board now.
And I gotta say, Flap definitely seems familiar for me. And you're right, it's another 3.5 salary player, but this is the type of player that I'm really interested in, because their play style is both. They like the twos, they like the threes, and the stat lines for both are pretty even for Flap. So it's gonna be a double threat again. When you see Flap on the field, whether it's two or threes, you're gonna have to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely seeming like they have a little bit more of an aversion to defense in twos, with roughly 2 saves per game, 47th overall in saves in twos. But we're going to be going ahead with our 36th pick from the Shadow, and Euronate is going to be taking Gogurt.
Yeah, and we're looking at Gogurt here. Again, it's another, well, just pointing out, this is a 14 salary here. So now we're getting into the 14s a little bit. And, just going off of what they can do in threes, their passing game is not bad. And these are my favorite types of players. It's not my particular play style, but I love having someone like this on my team. Someone who can pass the ball around and someone who can find their teammates on the field.
Yeah, those support players are so critical, especially at this high level. You want to see players that are willing to kind of share the ball around and piece together these incredible high-level plays that we love seeing on the field. And so I think Gogurt is going to be a really solid pick here from the Shadow at this point in the draft, especially being a 14. But we're going to go ahead with the 37th pick. It's going to be the Dodgers' first pick of this draft. And Inanimate J is going to take Supersonic, another 13 and a half.
Yeah, and again, we're staying pretty consistent with the salary wise, but and again, we're talking about how we like seeing the 13s and the 13.5s going a little early, because again, these people like an Anima J are seeing a spark. They're seeing some potential in these players that they can grow upon and mold to be a perfect fit for their teams.
Yeah, and Supersonic, I forgot we mentioned this prior. Supersonic is the supersonic and RLCS commentator, has been on the B stream for RLCS, is occasionally found casting grid matches for version 1. So definitely knows his stuff when it comes to Rocket League in general. So great pick there. We're going to be moving on to our 38th pick from the Spartans, in which B++ is going to be grabbing Zyme.
Now, this is a character. I was about to say a character. This is a player and a character for those that know Zyme. This is a player you need to really look out for because their win percentage is pretty consistent on both 2s and 3s, but prefers the 3s, but still for both has a over a 65% win percentage. And then the MVPR rating in 2s is 6.73, even though they prefer 3s.
Yeah, so some insane stat lines from there. Zyme, an incredible player. B++ really knows what he's doing here. And so with the 39th pick, the Aviators are going to have their first pick after a first-round retention, and they're going to be taking Silverwolf here.
Yeah, and got to give a shout out to my guy Grant CFO, for coming from the Aviators with this pick. Our co-caster of ours, much love to Grant CFO. But let's take a look at Silverwolf really quickly with the MVPR rating of a 3.74. Not bad at all. And again, they seem rather consistent on both 2s and 3s.
Yeah, and you love seeing that because that means that as we move into this season where we're going to start seeing some 3s out of MLE, that means that you can put this player, either on your 2 squad or your 3 squad, and they'll be able to perform just as well for you. And I love seeing these stats from a 13.5 because there's so much potential to grow here. They're not the greatest that we've seen, but they're good enough and they're consistent enough that I think this is going to be an extremely solid pick here as we get ready for our 40th pick, which is going to be held by the Wizards. Just waiting for some confirmation, and there it's going to be. They're going to be taking Dolo 7.
Yep, Dolo 7 prefers 3s, and I can absolutely see why. They're looking pretty dominant on that half of the field. And again, this is another assist-heavy player. This is someone who's not afraid to pass the ball. They're not afraid to share the sugar and get their teammates involved. And even with that, assist-heavy focus, they manage a win percentage of 54%, and with I don't want to say with only, but with a salary of 13.
Yeah, no, I was going to say this is another 13 coming off the board. So once again, a great developmental pick here, obviously showing a lot of potential, especially with an insane win percentage in 3s. So definitely great pick there from the Wizards. Now the Spectre are going to have the 41st pick, and they're going to be taking Maniac off the board.
Yeah, let's take a look at this one. This is a 14-5, a clean pick coming from the Spectre on this one. In 3s, and granted, they prefer both, but let's take a look here. In 3s, their shots on goal is they're ranked 8th so far overall and have a 3.69 rating for shots per game. So this is going to be a heavy offensive player.
Yeah, absolutely. And with those being 8th in shots, they're also 2nd in goals with 1.5 goals per game in 3. So just an insane offensive force there from Maniac. It's going to be a great pick by the Spectre. And now we have our 42nd pick in by the Bears, and the Bears are going to be taking Froggy here with their 42nd pick.
Well, if you're feeling a little bit froggy, then you might as well leave. And they have leapt on Froggy with a 3.5 salary. And, a win percentage of 50%, again, not bad. It's a consistent player all around, just all over the board, for MVPR, goals, assists, saves, and, of course, shots. They're just steadily consistent all across the board, and it's one of those well-balanced players that we love to see.
Yeah, and this is the kind of player that even with 73 games played, definitely has some intangibles that you would see in tryouts. Likely a great communicator and great rotations. So stat line, nothing too crazy, but great all-around player there in Froggy. And now the Ducks are going to be taking their 43rd pick overall, and it's going to be Kava coming off the board.
Yeah, one of the funnest things for me, as a caster is trying to pronounce all these names. And I'm glad you said it first because I would have butchered this. Cav. But yeah, seeing Kava come off the bench here with another 13.5. So we're seeing another one of these 13 players come out. And they're one of the only players so far that I've seen that was beneath the 50% win percentage mark. However, that being said, their saves per game are extraordinarily high. They're pulling down at least 2 saves per game.
Yep, and moving right along to the 44th pick, the Hurricanes are going to be taking Underdogger here. Great 14 salary. Shows some really good win percentages in 2s and 3s, although only having about 10 games played in scrims, so definitely went to a lot more tryouts.
Yeah, not just that, but you're going to have to watch out for Underdogger. 1, I'm a huge fan of the Underdog. 2, this guy right here is scoring at least 3 goals per game, 3rd ranked for goals per game. This right here is a shooter.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's in 2s when they have 3s as their preferred listed. So all around great player there. And now we are going to have our 45th pick, and the Eclipse are going to be taking Godless here.
Now this is a pick because I've seen Godless play. That is again a player that I'm very familiar with there, and they prefer twos, but I love watching them play threes. They have a 75% win percentage in threes, and they coming in with a salary of 14.
Yeah, absolutely. Super solid player there coming in from Godless. And now the Knights are going to have the 46th overall pick, and they're going to be taking Monotone Jones, who's a player I'm extremely familiar with outside of MLE. Great all-around player. His stats obviously show 7th overall in wins and threes, 3.77 MVPR. Incredible player to have on your team. Great pick there by the Knights.
Gotta say, Monotone Jones, if you ever want a career in casting, just know you have the perfect name for it. Monotone Jones. I absolutely love it. But let's look at the 75% win percentage that they have in threes. They're going to be an absolute danger to watch when they're on the threes field.
Yeah, absolutely. And so moving on, unfortunately, we have to move on to the next pick is going to be the 47th pick overall, and the Wolves are going to be taking Samurai.
Samurai, a definitely interesting pick to bring to the Wolf Pack. And again, just these deadly threes players coming out of the woodwork with a 70% win percentage in threes, and then still just holding it pretty well balanced as far as like the other stats are concerned. Again, a well-rounded player.
Yep, and then following the Wolves, we're going to see another retention at 48, and so our next pick on the board is going to be the Rhinos at 49. Their first pick of the draft. Reverse Fridge is going to be taking Smitty Cena here.
Now, can you see Smitty Cena? Because I see you, Smitty Cena. Smitty Cena right there with a 14.5 salary, one of the highest so far. It's still very, very impressive. And they have 39 games played in doubles, 34 in a standard 3v3, and still holding a pretty solid line, both at the win percentage and the MVPR rating.
Yep, and then following that pick, our 50th pick is once again going to be another retention here. So, you know, a lot of teams opting to take keep their own players, sometimes even twice, and only picking in the third round. So not uncommon to see here. But our next pick is going to be the 51st pick by the Spartans, and B++ is getting another good one here in Zaya.
Yeah, and like everybody already knows, you know, when, again, just to reiterate from what we said the first time, if B++ has your attention, then you're definitely going to be a player to look out for. With a 62% win percentage in the 2v2s and a pretty impressive shots per game percentage in threes. Just, again, a 14 salary player, definitely someone to look out for.
Yeah, and this is definitely a B++ style player. Great all-around player. Can really put them anywhere on the field and know that they're going to find some success. So, you know, love seeing the team that B++ looks like he's putting together here. I think this Spartan squad is going to be definitely something to look out for just based off these early picks. And so moving right along, we're going to have the Lightning at the 52nd pick, and they're going to be taking Ketterbomb.
Now, you see, this is interesting because, as a matter of fact, as we're moving later into the draft, we're seeing more and more of these 14 salaries pop up. And then Ketterbomb with a 55.56 win percentage in twos, as well as the shots per game is pretty high. They're getting at least 4 shots per game. This is going to be, again, another heavy offensive player.
Yeah, and these are some great stats, even from only 9 games played, you know, over the course of 9 games, still being able to win most of them and getting 1.11 assists per game shows me that this player definitely is very team-minded and is eager to share the ball around. So great pick there from the Lightning. So now we're going to move right ahead to the 53rd overall pick by the Pandas, and they're going to be taking Woozle here.
Now, one thing I really like about Woozle, I almost mispronounced the name and said Woozy, so I'm glad I didn't. But still, this is a 13 salary player, but they are very well performing in defense. Like, their defensive rating is really good. They're getting at least 1 save, almost 2 saves per game in both twos and threes.
Yeah, and that's over a total of 79 games played, 56 in twos, 23 in threes, and maintaining roughly the same save percentage. So you love seeing these lower salary players being that defensive minded. This definitely is going to be kind of a defensive cornerstone, I think, here for this Pandas squad, and definitely has so much room to improve and so much developmental potential being a 13 salary. So I think this was a super, super good mid-round pick here by the Pandas, and we now have confirmation on our 54th pick by the Foxes. They're going to be taking Galactic.
Good old Galactic coming in clutch for the Foxes here. I'm definitely going to be interested to see how Galactic fills out this roster, just because, you know, we're already pretty familiar with the Foxes as a pretty well-rounded team. So it's again a very interesting pick going in, and I really don't know how to call that heads or tails. Like, again, it's one of those players that have just so much potential. You really don't know what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our 55th pick is going to be held by the Hive. This is one of their first picks of the draft after a couple of retentions. So we're going to see Paulie taking Fiu,
I do, you do, doesn't matter. This one is gonna go to the Hive. They're gonna be picking up another player that has that potential to literally fill out any role that the Hive needs. So it's really interesting to see the Hive pick up a player like this one because they know what they need. They know the spot in the rotation that they need to fill, and this could be that player.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those players that just has not much there in terms of scrim data, but definitely obviously went to tryouts and showed something that the Hive definitely like to see. You know, Paulie is an extremely intelligent GM, knows exactly what they're looking for in their draft. So I think that's going to be a solid pick from them. Our 56th pick is going to be another retention, so we're going to move ahead to the 57th pick by the Lightning again. And the Lightning are going to be taking Moon here.
Yeah, and this is actually pretty interesting too because again, this is a player that prefers threes, but stat line basis they do pretty well in twos. So I'm seeing a double threat coming out of Moon.
Yeah, you know, and you love seeing these dual threat players that they can be offensive or defensive at any given time, because at that point it really doesn't matter where they are on the field; they're going to be dangerous. And so I think the Lightning picked a really good player here. And so with that, we're going to move on to our 58th pick from the Demolition, and they're going to be taking Peyton here, who's a player I'm very familiar with at a 13 salary.
Now, you see, this is actually pretty interesting. Granted that they've only played 4 games in threes, but they have won every single one of them. Won 100% win percentage off the 4 games that they played in threes, as well as getting a 3.73 win percentage. And then over on the other side of twos, still have a 63% win percentage, which is clearly over 50. So they're pulling down some dubs.
Yeah, and you know, in threes, only playing 4 games, that 100% win percentage is still nothing to shake a stick at. It's still extremely difficult to win that regularly, and once again, just shows great consistency, which again, especially of a 13 sal, is exactly what you want to see. You want to see consistency because it shows that the player knows what they're doing and is comfortable with how they play their game. And I think this is a great pick here from the Demolition. Now, our 59th pick is going to be by the Comets, and we're going to be seeing Ocam coming off the board here.
Yeah, let's take a look at Ocam right here. Ocam, you know, face cam, whatever. But we're seeing a salary of 14 right here, and then again, they are pretty fluent in both twos and the threes. But we're looking again at their two side because they are maintaining that 50% win percentage with 24 games played.
Yeah, and having a preference to both playlists here just kind of shows that these players did more scrims and twos, but definitely did some threes tryouts. So definitely a very solid player here. And then it looks like our 60 to 61 picks are going to be retentions. So more players being kept from the previous season.
Which honestly isn't bad because what is the classic philosophy that we all know and love? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you like the players that you currently have, stick with it because clearly something's clicking.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's going to be the Jets sitting at number 62 overall. And so we're just kind of waiting on some confirmation coming in for their pick. But, you know, this late in the draft, there's still some great players available across all salaries. But we are going to get confirmation. And this is a player I'm familiar with outside of MLE. This is going to be Arunos.
And you know, that's the thing about getting these late picks is because these are the ones that you can literally build and let them grow within your organization. So these are really the players that you're going to be investing the most into because you need to build them up to fit your rotation. So we're going to be seeing, I'm hoping to see a lot from Arunos, and then you knowing them off the field, I expect that you're going to want to see a lot from them too.
Yeah, and Arunos' stats here, being 93rd overall in saves, is definitely right on par with his playstyle. He's a very defensive-minded player. You know, comes from a very defensive-minded team in other in leagues outside of MLE. So definitely an extremely solid 13.5 pick. Is going to be a great cornerstone of defense there for the Jets. Now, moving on, we're going to have our 63rd pick overall is going to be held by the Hawks, and they're going to be taking Link here.
Link, I was almost going to call him Linky. I apologize. If I would have, yeah, that probably would have been bad. But regardless, Link right now is first of all, Xbox and PC player doing a little bit of flip-flop for Windows. But nonetheless, though, this is an offensive-heavy player, and I absolutely love it because you need to have players that are not afraid to shoot the ball and don't hesitate when the ball falls into their hands. They are not afraid to shoot, and they're managing to hold down an impressive amount of goals per game as well as shots per game.
Yep, and having a preference to both playlists, twos and threes, they definitely came out and split the difference here with their with their scrims, playing 39 in twos, 32 in threes, and maintaining pretty similar stat lines across the board. So definitely a really solid player here. Great pickup by the Hawks. Stas has been in this league for a long time. He knows exactly what he's looking for, and I think this is going to be a really solid pick here going forward.
Yep, and now moving on to the 64th pick in the MLE Season 12 draft is going to be the Elite with Whippy Flippy.
Yep, and once again, we're just waiting on confirmation for the pick to come in. You got to wait for the system to kind of work itself out there. We finally have our thumbs up confirmation. And like you said, it is going to be Whippy Flippy. Once again, Ray Finkel getting a great 14 pick here, being one of his first seasons as a GM, getting someone who is fourth in shots, almost 6 shots per game at the champ level is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I'm sorry I jumped the gun on that one. I just saw Ray Finkel and Whippy Flippy, and I just wanted to say it out loud. It was just couldn't resist. But again, you're absolutely right. Not only were they fourth in the shots per game, but they're eighth in the MVPR rating. Again, this is not only a player that can shoot the ball, but it's a player that can make the shots.
Yeah, and having a preference for twos, having stat line this great in twos, I think Whippy Flippy is definitely my first kind of obvious diamond in the rough pick here. So great pick there by the Elite at 64. And it's so interesting seeing players like this fall as far as they do, as this stat line is just crazy. And it just goes to show that some players some teams just want things that are maybe a little bit more than stats, but either way, Whippy is going to be an incredible player for the Elite going forward this season.
Yeah, and I definitely love seeing players like this because, again, it's a salary number 14 here. It's not somebody that you necessarily want to wave a stick at, but at the same time, it's like you said, it's that diamond in the rough, which gives them an unspoken advantage because people kind of sleep on them, and when they do, they underestimate that player, and they are the ones that tend to shine the most.
Yep, and that is going to do it for our second round here of the Champ League draft. You guys are going to get your one last look here at the draft board as we get ready to wipe that clean and get ready for the next round. But, at Soga, I think we saw some really interesting picks coming in here so far.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you couldn't have said it any better. I know that's kind of like a cliche thing to say, but like we're seeing players that like literally are coming from like all walks of life in the worlds of Rocket League. Like we're seeing twos players, we're seeing threes players, we're seeing people that can do a little bit of both, PC, PS, PlayStation, Xbox, all coming together, and they're showing like the specific skills that they have and what they're capable of and how they're going to fit in these well-rounded teams. So it's just really interesting to see literally all of the Rocket League community coming together and just really putting together these top-notch organizations.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see to see the potential of these 13s that we've seen go so far. I think we've only seen about 3 or 4 going already, but just to see 13 Sals getting drafted at all is something I'm very excited to see. I love seeing the low Sals go because that means that they're trusted by the team that's drafting them to perform well, and they have so much untapped potential. So we are now going to be flashing you guys the blank third round draft board as we get ready to start this third round. I'm going to say third round as many times as I can. And once again, it's going to be the Blizzard starting us off, and we are just waiting for confirmation on their pick. But so far, they've had some really solid picks this draft.
Yeah, they definitely did. Like again, Blizzard having the benefit of having the first pick is, definitely paying off for them. And let's see if it continues with their next pick. Again, waiting for confirmation to come in on the 65th pick. But it's, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it's still looking pretty good for the Blizzard.
Yeah, absolutely. Grabbing a player like John Mellencamp first, and then their preceding picks, they definitely are looking like they're putting together a very solid offensive-minded team. We do have confirmation on their third round pick, and that is going to be Adonis leading off the third round.
And again, just an excellent pick to pick up going into the third round. And they're getting a player like this a little bit late, which is, again, Adonis is astonishing. Just so it's interesting to see them go this late in the draft.
Yeah, and these are the kind of players that you want to see fall to you. And sometimes, the salary, being only a 13 salary kind of has a lot to do with that because, the stats are kind of okay. But when you look at the stats compared to the salary, they're extremely good. And especially being a very defensive-minded player, this is exactly what the Blizzard wants to pair with their previous picks. So great pick by them. We're going to move on to our 66th pick from the Tyrants, and they're going to be taking the Game Hopper.
Now, who doesn't want a player like the Game Hopper? Let's look at this. A consistent salary 14 on both 2s and 3s. Honestly, a clinch pickup this late in the draft. This is the ones that you really want to wait for, so that way you could scoop them up. And again, I'm surprised they're going this late in the draft. They have a 60% win percentage in 2s and then a 59% win percentage in 3s. So very close to that 60% consistency in both game modes. Like that is one crazy pick to have this late in the draft.
Yeah, great player in the 3rd round there, as the Ducks now have their next pick. 67th pick overall in this draft is going to be Elite Inferno.
Yeah, an Elite Inferno here. Like, they prefer 2s, but I don't know, maybe they do a little bit better in 3s. A 14 salary there, and an MVPR rating of a 4.54 in 2s, and then a 3.30 in 3s. And again, this is one of those shot-heavy players, so be prepared to play a lot of defense if you're going up against Elite Inferno.
Yeah, and just the Ducks in general, they've had some really solid offensive picks so far this draft, but we are going to be moving on to the 68th pick held by the Shadow, and they're going to be taking Element, another 14 sal.
Yep, and this is going to be an Xbox player here, and they prefer 2s, and I can definitely see why. With a 14 salary here and a 62.50% win percentage in 2s and an MVPR rating of a 5.41, definitely impressive to see. And when you have those players that are specific to a playlist, they're going to be that much more focused, and they're going to absolutely dominate in that game mode.
Yep, and now the moment you've all been waiting for. It is the 69th pick of this champ draft, and the Dodgers getting only their 2nd draft here. They're going to be taking Hunted.
Yep. And for those that don't know, Hunted and Sleegy and all of our favorite esports casters here at MLE and also from around the Rocket League community are going to be on the same team. Hunted, that's going to be dangerous to be put up, especially when they're teamed up with Sleegy. So you have 2 top-notch Rocket League analytical brains working on the same field at the same time for the same team.
Yeah, and throwing them in there with Supersonic, that is just so much Rocket League knowledge all on one team. So gonna definitely be a team to look out for are the Dodgers. Great pickups there from Inanimate J as we now move on to the 70th overall pick, and B++ and the Spartans are gonna be taking Dizzy here.
Now, this is insane. I think, I could be mistaken, but I think this is the highest win percentage that we've seen besides the 100%, the Almighty Threes player that had the 4 wins. But this player right here, Dizzy, has 88.9 just win percentage in 2s, absolutely phenomenal, and then still holding the 62% win percentage in 3s. So this, again, just one of those all-around players that's going to be absolutely dangerous with a salary of 13.
Yeah, and B++ getting himself a great sleeper pick here at a 13 sal. I think this is actually his 2nd 13th sal that he's picked this draft. Great stat line here from Dizzy. B++ definitely putting a lot of trust in these low salary players. Knows exactly what he's looking for. As we've said, incredibly smart Rocket League player and just great Rocket League mind there in B++. So knows exactly what he's putting together. And now we are going to have the Comets with the 71st overall pick, and they're going to take Just Hollywood.
Gotta say, I love the name Just Hollywood because I want to see some show-stopping performances coming from you, my friend. With a 13.5 salary and a 50% win percentage in 3s, I prefer 3s myself, but this player here prefers both. Doesn't mind getting on either side of the 2s game or the 3s game.
Yeah, absolutely. The Comets, I think, have gotten a really good pick here, especially defensively. Just Hollywood sitting at 9th overall in saves in 3s and 30th overall in 2s, I think is going to be a really great defensive player there for the Comets. We now have the 72nd pick overall from the Express, and Cope is going to be taking Solus here.
Yeah, you see, I didn't know if it was going to be Solus or Solace. My tongue wants to say Solace, but my mind wants to say Solus. And again, I think this might be one of those sleeper picks because this is one of those kind of like diamond in the rough players that we've seen early on. And again, they might just happen to fit perfectly well in with the Express.
Yeah, and this is definitely the kind of player that you just look at the salary and go, okay, they're 13. The rest of the stat line kind of makes sense. So definitely showed up a lot more for 3s, playing 118 3s games as opposed to only 33 2s games. So this definitely looks like a player that outperformed in tryouts and probably showed a lot of the intangibles, because I know Cope is an extremely smart GM, knows exactly what he's looking for, knows exactly what they're looking for in their players. And I think this is going to be a very solid 13 pick here for the Express. We now have the 73rd overall pick by the Spectre, and they're going to be taking the Pope 870.
Not just any Pope, y'all. This is the Pope, okay? And they have a 13.5 salary, preferring the twos playlist. You know, that's fair enough, but they are doing absolutely phenomenal in threes as well, with a 50% win percentage in threes, and just a nice MVPR rating on the two side as well, while also putting up the shot count.
Yeah, absolutely. Super great 13.5 pick here at this point in the draft from the Spectre. Once again, we're seeing another kind of developmental player. Shows very good potential as an all-around team player. So great pick there from the Spectre. Now the Bears are going to have our 74th pick, and they're going to be taking triple S, SSS, triple S, SSS, something like that.
You see, when I see SSS, I think so. I decided to name them the Slippery Sneaky Snake. That's what I decided to name them. But they have a 13 salary and a win percentage of 68.06% in two. So again, another twos danger that we're going to be seeing coming out from SSS.
Yeah, and I love seeing these 13 sals going. Like I said, great development here, great developmental opportunity here for the Bears. They have a player that they can definitely keep for a while, and hopefully have a couple good, successful seasons from going forward, as now the Hive have confirmed our 75th pick, and it is going to be Moxon.
Yep, and this is going to be a 13-5 pick here with a 62.50% win percentage in threes, and you know they're pulling down an impressive stat line as far as like the MVPR rating goes. But it's funny to see that like as far as the other stats are concerned, not one of them is like extraordinarily high over the other one. So this is again another well-balanced player.
Yeah, absolutely. And you love seeing this kind of balance, especially at the Champ League level. You know, you want a player that you can trust at any point on the field, as we said, and definitely shows potential in both twos and threes. So I think just overall, this was a great pick by the Hive. Biggest thing that I'm looking at is 1.94 saves per game in twos. You know, this is such a great defensive mind here that the Hive have gotten at a 13.5 salary. And to see that kind of defensive power at the 13.5 salary, I think they definitely have a player that they can base their defense around a lot going forward.
100%. You already know I love the saves. I'm a defensive player myself, so I recognize game recognize game, and that right there is going to be a savior if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to move on to our 76th overall pick, is going to be the Hurricanes taking the Intergalactic Turtle.
Now, who better to fit into a Hurricane than an Intergalactic Turtle? Let's take a look at them right here. They have a 13.5 salary with a 50% win percentage in threes and a 46.67% win percentage in twos. And now in twos, they have the better MVPR rating with a 4.22. So, you know, again, it's one of those players that aren't necessarily dominant in one game mode or the other, but they can sneak up on you.
Yeah, and once again, we're seeing kind of a preference towards defense, at least in threes, which shows me that, you know, a little bit of passivity in, I think that's the word, passivity, in defensive rotations there on in threes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially at this level. You know, you're not really sure what people are going to be capable of. You know, people have high mechanical skill here, but consistency isn't always there. So I think a great pick there by the Hurricanes, as we now have the Eclipse getting their next pick at 77 overall. We are going to see Brindle coming off the board.
And now Brindle here, a threes player with a 13.5 salary, is going to have a 53.57 win percentage in threes. And, you know, on the two side, you know, it's not as good as their threes games. Granted, they are a threes player, but still they're doing pretty well in the saves category on both the threes and the twos. So again, it's one of those anchor players that was honestly a necessity for any team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is another player that seeing the stats in front of me, you know, the 13.5 salary definitely explains a lot with the stats, but I also see this player as being, you know, just a great overall team player. You know, knows how to let their teammates play around them. And I think Brindle is going to see a lot of success with this Eclipse squad. Now we are moving on to the 78th pick from the Outlaws. Once again, seeing another player I am very familiar with. It is my good friend EDD every damn day.
Every damn day, this person is getting saves. The saves are extraordinarily impressive coming from this player, EDD, with a 2.22 rating in the doubles, which happens to pay off because they have a 77.78 win percentage in twos on top of that.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with EDD from United Rogue. So definitely a very defensive-minded player. So solid when he is in front of his own net, and he's got such a way of making sure that his clears are going out and transitioning onto offense. He's going to be a great pickup here for the Outlaws. I think Stovad's got himself a really, really good one here late in the draft. I think that's going to be a big sleeper pick. We now have the 79th pick in from the Wolves, and that is going to be, wow, what a name. This man's name is Darth Vapor.
Yeah, honestly, you can't hate on that name. That name gets instant love for me. Kudos to you. But this is another threes player with a 13.5 salary, and with 36 games played in threes, has a 41.67 win percentage. But this is, again, is a pretty good, well-rounded defensive player, but also being able to pull up a few assists. Because a lot of those times when we have these defensive players, they turn their defense into their offense, and their saves end up turning into pass plays.
Yep, going to be a really solid player there for the Wolves. We now have our 80th pick confirmed. It is going to be the Bulls taking Isaac 13003, one of our last 14.5 sals.
Yeah, this is a pretty high salary cap, and the Bulls are going to want to get a good taste of Isaac here, as you said, with a win percentage of 55.56 for doubles and a 65% wins in threes. Very impressive stat lines coming off of Isaac here, and with again another solidly defensive player with a 2.33% saves in doubles.
Yeah, and this is another player that I think they only fall like this because of their salary being that high. Some teams get a little nervous about taking high salary players because they're afraid of them ranking out. So I think that's definitely going to be another sleeper pick there in Isaac. But now the Knights have our 81st pick, and they're going to be taking Loaf of Bricks.
Yep, now Loaf of Bricks is nothing you want to take a bite out of here, as they pick up this twos player here with a 13.5 salary. And again, this is a well-rounded player. It's not something that is just going to be, used in twos or threes. This player is going to be used in both playlists. And again, just that overall balance, being able to achieve on both sides of the ball, offensive and defensively, I'm going to be looking out for the Loaf of Bricks.
Yeah, and having seen the Knights picks previous in this draft, I think Loaf of Bricks is gonna work extremely well with the team that the Knights are trying to put together here. So I think this is a super solid pick, especially showing some great defensive prowess here in the threes playlist. But now the Express have their third pick coming in here in the third round. It's gonna be 82nd overall, and it's gonna be Reek.
Now, you see, Reek is another one of those players I like with a 13.5 salary, prefers the 3 games mode. I respect that, but also maintaining some good assist plays. And of course, the pass plays win the games. My dude Reek can smell a teammate a mile away and is able to find them and hit them on the map to make those pass plays happen.
Yeah, and definitely played a lot more 2 scrims, having 15 2 scrims versus only 4 3 scrims. And definitely looked like they struggled a little bit in 2, so it's easy to see why they prefer 3s. But definitely shows a lot of potential to improve. And I think can definitely get their 2s game a lot better going forward, especially now that they've been drafted by the Express. Like I said, great team, I think, being formed here with this Express Champ League team. Cope, I think, has really kind of nailed this draft so far.
Yep, and now coming up with the next pick is going to be the Pirates with the 83rd pick, and they pick my liege. They pick the King.
Yeah, and King definitely shows why he prefers 2. Once again, one of only a couple 14.5 salaries left. 57 games played in 2s with a 64.9 win percentage. And I think once again, we've seen a case where a super solid 14.5 has kind of gotten passed over so far just because of the fact they're 14.5.
Right, so again, it's one of those sleeper picks that are going late in the draft, but they're going to pay off immensely in the long game. And just in my personal opinion, they're definitely going to be paying off because, again, it's not only are they 14.5, but you can also build on that player as well. And again, it's really dangerous, kind of playing with the salary cap. But we're going to move on to the Sharks now with the 84th pick in the MLE Season 12 draft, and they pick Boots.
Yeah, and Boots is another really solid, just all-around player. Prefers 3s and played about 31 total games played between 2s and 3s. But in his 16 games that he played in 3s, he had a 68.75 win percentage with 0.69 assists per game. So a very, very solid team player in 3s, and I definitely think is going to be a player to look out for this Sharks squad.
Yep, and now coming up next with the 85th pick in the MLE Season 12 draft, the Pandas are going to pick up Cookie Monster.
And this is another player with not a ton of stats to look at, but the stats that we do have are really solid. You know, 1 assist, averaging 1.00 assists per game in the threes playlist gives him 8th overall. 1.13 assists per game in twos with 20th overall. This is another really solid all-around team player, not super individual offensive minded, and I think that's something really important to look at here.
Yeah, and honestly, my OCD is loving Cookie Monster right now, because if we're looking at their threes ranks, they're getting 1 assist per game, 1 save per game, and 1 shot per game. That is pretty impressive. If you're looking at their goal to their shot ratio, they're making at least, they're shooting at least 50%, which is, again, nothing to wave a stick at. That's impressive even for the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. And as we're starting to get a little bit towards the tail end of the draft here, I think only about 10 or 15 or so picks left, we are going to have the Foxes with the 86th overall pick, and they're going to take Armo 27.
Now, this is a dangerous pick right here. An Xbox One player with a 14.5 salary, again, towards the end of the draft, because playing with that line is a little scary. But this is a scary player. We're talking about Armo 27. This person right here has a 55.5% win percentage in doubles 2v2 and a 67.86 percentage in the 3v3. That is dangerous all over.
Yeah, and once again, Armo, one of the last 14 and a halves on the board. I think there's only about 2 or 3 left after they go. But great win percentages there. And look at this goals percentage in threes. They're at 10th overall with 1.36 goals per game. That is some insane consistency there. And I think that Armo is going to be a very, very solid pick here for the Foxes going into the season.
And coming up with the 87th pick of the MLE Season 12 draft, the Flames have chosen Night Doc Wolf.
So first off, being one of my favorite usernames that I've seen so far in this game, in this draft, I think Night Doc Wolf is a player that I remember very vaguely from when I was first playing in MLE. I remember him being a very solid player, and the stat line definitely shows that. And I love seeing these players with some higher stat lines, especially from lower sals, with Night Doc Wolf being a 13.5. It shows that, they'll work very well with their team. They're not really one to kind of, put the entire team on their back and make everything about them. And so I think Night Doc Wolf is going to be a very, very solid midline player there for that Flames team.
Couldn't agree with you more. Now moving on with the 88th pick of the MLE Season 12 draft. The Knights pick, baby, bye, 01.
Yeah, bye-bye 01 being another 13.5 salary going off the board. Saying that they have a preference to both twos and threes, but looked like they stuck to the threes playlist in their scrims. Played 25 total games with a 44% win percentage, but 2.44 shots per game. Now, that's not the highest that we've seen, but it is in the 84th. They are in the 84th rank there. And so definitely showing some great offensive pressure there. And you always want to see a lot of shots going on net as much as you can, especially at this level, because the more shots you can put on, the more you're just going to kind of wear down these defenses. And I think having a great defensive player in Bye is going to do really well for the Knights going forward this season, especially with the other picks they've had this draft.
Yeah, and what we're seeing with Bye is, they're kind of a wild shot. And this is the thing about wild shots. If you can train it and you can harness it and they start putting those shots on target, that's going to be incredibly dangerous. Because, again, this could be that sleeper pick. They definitely like taking those shots per game. But once you start taking those shots and you put them in the back of the net, then you have an all-around offensive just juggernaut. And that is definitely the potential that I see in Bye.
Yep, and our 89th pick of the draft is going to be held by the Lightning here. Looks like their pick is in, just waiting for confirmation, and there it's going to be. We are going to have EX coming off the board for the Lightning here with the 89th pick.
I really wish that EX would have went to the Express just for the sheer fun of it, but we don't always get what we want. But still, it's going to be, X going to this team here, and it's, again, just could be another sleeper pick that we're seeing with a 13.5 salary and nearly getting that 50% win percentage in twos. So, again, this is going to be a player that you can build up to fit your roster any way that you want.
Yep, and we are now just waiting on the 90th overall pick is held by the Demolition. We finally have confirmation there. They're going to be taking Styles, who's another player that I'm very familiar with outside of MLE from United Rogue. And Styles is just such a great personality. A lot of fun to talk to, just really great guy to be around. And I think that he's going to bring a lot of personality to this Demolition squad.
You see, it's funny because I'm actually familiar with Styles as well, because Styles be styling. I've seen Styles play. They leave an impression every time they're on the field, and with a 51.28% win percentage in threes, they're going to be somebody to be looking out for.
Yeah, and being a 13 Sal, this is another developmental player, and I think that the Demolition have gotten a really good one here, and I think someone that they could potentially, build their franchise around going forward should he be retained, after the season. And like I said, just is going to be such a great personality and a great overall player, I think, for this team. I think pairs very well with the other players that the Demolition have taken so far this draft. And we now have the Aviators with the 91st overall pick, and they are going to be taking Jester GG.
Jester GG, because when Jester is on the field, it's always going to be a good game. We got 13.5 salary and an influential player on both sides to pitch here for 2v2s and 3v3s, but also for shots and saves. Their percentages on both are pretty consistent, and that's pretty rare to see a consistent line on both the offensive side and the defense.
Yeah, and especially from a 13.5 salary, it just kind of goes to show that, this is exactly what teams want at the Champion League level. They want that consistency because, that's a player that you can always count on regardless of the situation. And so I think this was an extremely solid pick here by the Aviators. And I think they can really base their team around this player a lot going forward. 1.22 assists per game with the 11th overall rank there. Definitely a really solid team player here.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those 13-5s, and granted, they are going a little bit later in the draft, but it's always those diamond in the rough players that you really have to look out for. And what we were saying earlier, just their consistency alone makes them enough of a danger to make you take notice. But now we're going to move on with the 92nd pick in the MLE Season 12 draft. It's the Puffins who picks Spidey720.
Yeah, and for a 13.5 salary here, who prefers twos, definitely has a very good stat line in threes, with 13, ranking 13th in goals with 1.25, 24th in shots with a 3.17, but in twos having a 4.32 for shots per game. Another very solid offensive player here. And I think the Puffins have definitely shown that they want to add a good amount of low salary offense that they can develop along with their two prior retentions. And so I think that this is going to be a very solid pick for them coming into this season.
And now moving on with the 93rd pick in the MLE Season 12 draft, the Aviators choose Wild.
And this is another player who, just looking at the stat line, I'm kind of surprised has fallen this far, other than just being a 13.5. Within 40, ranking within 40th in pretty much every category in twos, 68.97 winning percentage, 5.62% MVPR, 2.32% shot, 2.34 goals per game. This player is just an offensive powerhouse, and I think the Aviators got a steal here this late in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one, again, I don't even want to call it a sleeper pick, because this is not a player you sleep on. Nobody's sleeping on this guy, Wild. Like, literally a wild card player. It's somebody that's shooting off all cylinders, and you really want to have one of those shooters that are up front and are not afraid and just simply don't hesitate.
Yep, and now moving into the 94th pick of the draft, the Tyrants are going to be taking Generally Mean here, another player I'm familiar with from United Rogue, who at a 13.5 salary, don't let these stats fool you. Generally Mean is an extremely solid player. You put him with the right team, and he's going to absolutely dominate. Very solid team player, knows how to pass the ball, will get saves when he needs to, and his rotations are just so clean. He's always where he needs to be when he needs to be there. This is an incredible pick by the Tyrants this late in the draft.
Now, you see, this is something that is a little interesting to me, that they don't have a stat for the demos. I'm pretty sure if there was a demo stat line, we'd be seeing a lot more top, percentage ranked players that aren't necessarily showing up on the board on other places. And what Generally Mean, they could be Generally Mean with the demolitions and the bump plays. So that could be something like an entirely different stat line that we're not even seeing coming from these players.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, that is something that Generally Mean is very good at. He's a very physical player. But we are now going to move on to the 95th pick, which is going to be the Hawks. And then the Hawks are taking who I believe is the final 14.5 sal on the board. Actually, no, I lied. I think there's two other ones still on the board. After, I'm going to take a shot here and say this is Slime Rancher.
Slime Rancher, Slim Rancher, or whatever. It's still, the name doesn't matter. It's what comes down to what they can do on the field, and what they can do is play solid 2s and 3s at a consistent level with an 83.33 win percentage in 3s. Their preference is going to be something to look forward to when we start the 3s games in this upcoming season.
Yep, and now with the 96th overall pick, we are going to see Ray Finkel in the Elite taking T-Bone Jones here, another 13.5 coming off the board late in this draft.
All right, now correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the same team that got Monotone Jones not that long ago? So is this a dynamic duo, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head, but T-Bone Jones getting the lovely pleasure of being the last overall pick in this draft, going from John Mellencamp all the way to T-Bone Jones. I think he's going to be a great player for this elite squad this season. Definitely a developmental player at a 13.5 salary, and definitely someone for them to look at going forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is in front of you your full draft board from the Champion League. Atsoka, do you have any thoughts about this Champions League draft?
The only thing I really have to say going into this is that, remember, this is the Champions League. Around this specific rank and around this skill league here, there's a lot of really good talent that we see because they've made it into this league. But still being within that league, there's so much room to grow. So we already know that every single one of these players is inept and adept and already accustomed, and they have the know-how for Rocket League. Now it's in this particular league, it's about refining it. It's about making it not perfecting, because we can't get perfection in games, but we're going to get the closest we can, and practice makes perfect, and seeing that is really going to happen in the Champions League. So keep a lookout for every single one of these players that we've seen in the Champions League, because next year we might see them in a league up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the funniest things for me was the Dodgers getting the clean sweep of casters there, getting Hunter and Supersonic, and then obviously also having Sleegy on the team. So definitely a team to look out for there going forward. But that is going to do it for the Champions Draft. Coming up after this break, we are going to have the Masters Draft. My name has been an Odd Fellow, joined, as always, a great pleasure by Captain Atsoka. Do you have any parting words as we send these people off to a break?
Just stick around, stay tuned, because we have more of the MLE Season 12 Draft coming your way. Do not go anywhere. Captain's orders.